Dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thanks for joining this session, which is EU-sponsored. It takes place at the EU Pavilion at COP27, which is held in Sharm-el-Sheikh, Egypt, which kicked off yesterday with the Leaders Summit. And you may have seen that today the EU statement was delivered jointly by Council President Charles Michel and Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Maybe we make reference to that later in the course of the discussion. I'm very happy to be joined here on the panel by four distinguished speakers. Two represent European institutions, namely the European External Action Service and the European Investment Bank. And then we have two voices from Arab countries in the southern Mediterranean. There's a lot of overlap and good cooperation with the European Union. You will hear about that when the speakers take the floor. I would like to thank the speakers for making themselves available and everybody following us here in the auditorium and also live online in Egypt and beyond. So welcome again. I am the EU's Deputy Ambassador to Egypt and the League of Arab States, based in Cairo. And I would like to start the discussion, which, by the way, will enable every one of you here and online to ask questions and engage in the second half. I would like to kick off the discussion by introducing to you a member of the European External Action Service, the EU's foreign ministry, so to speak, under the leadership of Mr. Borrell, the High Representative. The colleague I'm referring to is called Wouter Wormgoor, sitting here on my right. Wouter has been a Dutch diplomat since 2002, and in his current capacity in the Green Transition Team at the European External Action Service, Wouter is well versed in the politics and EU policies related to climate change. In his current work in Brussels, he translates EU policies into dialogues and concrete cooperation via the EU delegations and EU member states. So, Wouter, I'd like to ask you, could you say a few words about the importance of climate diplomacy, how it's being conducted, EU climate diplomacy, and especially how it's being implemented with our partners at a local level?
Thank you very much, and delighted to be here in this panel, and welcome to the public and to the public online. Let me maybe start with what I saw when I arrived in Egypt, in Sharm. I saw a lot of deserts and cities, and in these cities life concentrates. Green, water, everything is concentrated in these cities, and that is actually already a symbol for what we are talking about here today. Climate change can only be effectively tackled when we go not only to the global level, the reason why we are here at COP27 right now, but especially if we take action and enable the actors at local level, at city level, and at regional level to play a role. Just to give you an example, now while we are here in Egypt, the population is growing in Egypt with 1 million roughly per year, and these will all be in cities. So the concentration will increase, and the challenges related to food security, to water, in combination with the increasing temperatures, will really pose challenges that cannot be tackled only from a global level. So this requires really urgent and joint action, and in particular at this level. We, as the EU, we have a firm commitment not only at this global level, but also at the more local level, to cooperate with the region. We have expressed this in multiple declarations. Last year, for example, we adopted together jointly the Union for the Mediterranean Ministerial Declaration, in which our commitment is very clearly spelled out. Another example going beyond Egypt is our EU-Moroccan Green Partnership, and we look forward to have more of these ambitious partnerships with countries in the region. What we really need to focus on in the coming years, and that is something that is still in development, is more focus on adaptation and adaptation finance in the region. What we're doing currently now here is, as much as we can, assisting local authorities in the southern Mediterranean, and the speakers after me will dive a little bit more into detail in that, is to formulate sustainable policies and to enable them to implement these. And as I said, cities are really at the forefront of the action that has to be taken. Citizens know where the action needs to be, how to adapt, how to adjust, also how to take mitigating measures. And in this case, I think it would be very interesting to talk a little bit more about one of the examples, the Covenant of Mayors, and in particular the Covenant of Mayors in the Mediterranean, that has kicked off with the support of the European Union, and is actually, in my view, a very concrete and good example of how we can support local communities, mayors, with not only planning and evaluating their climate policies, also support them in their adaptation policies and in their finance. Finance is often the bottleneck, and for that we provide funds to leverage not only public money, because the public money alone will not do it, but to leverage with public money more private funds aiming for adapting and mitigating policies in the cities. And I'm also happy to announce that we are starting a new program which is called Advancing Climate Adaptation in the Southern Mediterranean. We can maybe talk a little bit more about that later, but it is linked up to the UN Capital Development Fund, with whom we cooperate a lot. And I think with this we set the right conditions for local action and local adaptation action. One maybe element for the discussion for later is, when I looked at the 122 cities that are connected to the Covenant, I noticed that there were, at the moment, at least formally in written, 0 adaptation policies and about 700 mitigation policies. So that indicates that there's still a lot of work to be done. We're on the right track in terms of mitigation, but our adaptation action still needs to get started, I would almost say. And I'm sure that other speakers have their views and ideas about it. And with that, I close, looking forward to the discussion, and on behalf of the EU, also looking forward in general in deepening our cooperation in this field. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wouter. You touched upon a number of important issues that will be coming up during the discussion, such as concept of partnership with our friends and neighbors in the southern Mediterranean. And 2 of the next speakers, I think, will be referring to a project called ClimaMed. So I would like to introduce the next speaker, Dr. Naguib Amin, who has been the team leader of this ClimaMed program for a number of years. He is an architect and engineer, urban planner and trainer, internationally recognized development expert with more than 35 years of professional experience, including over 20 years as team leader, during which he has led key projects and programs covering multiple areas of urban planning and local municipal development, including on climate change, energy efficiency, area planning, heritage site management. His experience is extensive in the Mediterranean countries and in the application of EU programs. And here you see, and you will hear it from him, that the element of partnership is really at the core of what we do. Mr. Amin is currently the leader of the EU-funded project ClimaMed, which stands for Action for Climate in the Southern Mediterranean. And before that, Mr. Amin led the EU-funded program Cleaner Energy Savings Mediterranean Cities, CESMED. So Dr. Amin, we have worked together also in Egypt. We have met before. It's always a pleasure to see you and to have you as a speaker. So I would like to ask you the following question. Could you explain a bit to the audience here and online what ClimaMed is all about? At central level, the project supports governments on climate governance and mainstreaming. And at the local level, and Wouter also spoke about this, the project works hand in hand with local authorities to support the development of sustainable energy and climate action plans, the so-called CCAPs. So what are these plans? Why are they important to the EU, to neighboring countries, and to the public? We would like to hear that from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kraus. Thank you for mentioning me. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. What we do, to begin with, the objective of our project, of our action, is to mainstream climate actions in Southern Mediterranean countries. When we talk about mainstreaming climate actions, it translates into allowing climate policies to be taken into consideration in national actions of key ministries that are related with climate. To do that in a practical way, we prepare in each country at a national level. When I say national level, at ministerial level, we work closely with them and prepare a document, a strategic document that we call the Climate Action Strategy, in which we basically list and analyze the laws and regulations and current policies that are, again, related to climate actions, and we, together with them, put recommendations to how to include the climate actions within the existing laws and regulations. Let it be urban planning laws, let it be financial laws, and so on and so forth. I think the most important thing in what we do at this level is not actually to prepare the study. A study is paper, but is to work with representatives of national authorities and do it with them and make sure that they adopt these decisions and they are asked to go and take it with them, this decision, and try to first steps to integrate it into their respective government authorities. This is the first level. We work with national government central authorities to decide with them on which cities would be the pilot cities to prepare with them what we call the SECAPs, the Sustainable Energy and Climate Action Plans. These plans, we do 10 in each country. Again, the most important thing we do is we don't just do the plan and leave, we do the plan with the cities, with them, using their language, their framework of work, their institutional demands and institutional capacities as well. And most importantly, is without them, we cannot do the baseline emission inventories. Each one of those plans includes the strategic vision of a city in the framework of its planning regulations, national planning regulations. It includes a baseline emission inventory, and it includes, based on the baseline emission inventories, specific actions to reduce the emissions over 30 or 40 years, depending on and related to the NDC of every country. Additionally, they include an awareness-raising dimension in each plan. We don't mean awareness raising in terms of communication only, but awareness raising how to implement those plans. You have to make sure that all the actors are aware of the existing of those plans and do them. Finally, these plans are related to the national authorities.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amin. You spoke about implementing decisions and plans. And we are hearing that this whole COP is meant to be focusing on implementation of the Paris goals. So you also spoke about the local level of engagement. Wouter, you spoke about it, and Dr. Amin, you made reference to it. And you spoke about municipalities. They are the ones on the ground making an impact for the people, translating policies into concrete action and change on the ground. So I'm very happy to welcome to this group Mr. George Youssef. He is a mayor of a municipality in Lebanon by the name of Menjes. I understand that your municipality is quite ambitious and special in its objectives to cut emissions by 25%. It's also involved in the Klimamet program that we heard about. So I think you are doing very important work on the ground. We would like to hear more about that in a second. Could you maybe, building on what you heard from previous speakers, tell us what the greatest challenges are in implementing these policies at the local level in the context that you're operating in Lebanon and maybe beyond? And what are the lessons learned for you and maybe also for cities in Lebanon, in the region, in this partnership?
I want to talk in French. It's easy for me. Bonjour, je vous remercie pour.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me. I would like to thank the organizers of this event. They gave me the opportunity to share with you the experience of the municipality of Menjes. As you know, as all Lebanese municipalities, the Menjes municipality is faced with an unprecedented crisis. First of all, being the health crisis, the refugee crisis, of course, also, which has begun in 2011. Imagine now that a third of our population are refugees in Lebanon. Can you imagine that? We are also faced with a political, financial, economic crisis. The Lebanese currency has lost 2% of its value. Many banks are closed, and the budget of our municipality that was given by the state does not go beyond $5 billion per year. The Menjes municipality is inscribed on a list of World Heritage natural sites and cultural sites. We have many archaeological and natural World Heritage sites, and we need to preserve them, value them, of course. And now in Lebanon, we also have a problem regarding jobs. Very qualified people are leaving the country. So we have a mass immigration on one side, and on the other side, high levels of unemployment and poverty. The Menjes municipality is located in the far north of Lebanon, in the poorest region of our country, in a red zone, as we call them, because we are close to the border. The Menjes municipality could, since it was created in 2012, so as I'm saying, this municipality was created in 2012, so it's a very young municipality. And we wanted to make of all these challenges opportunities by building partnerships with different donors through European projects, Klimamet, Sisment, NECBC, etc., etc. And now we are working with the EU on the C4C project as well. In 2014, we have joined the Covenant of Mayors, and the Menjes municipality was the first municipality to complete its CPAC. And as Dr. Naguib said, we have also conducted other action plans through partnerships with universities at national and international level, especially in the areas of natural resources management, cultural resources management. We have established a strategy to fight wildfires and to promote tourism. As Dr. Naguib said,
C'est un document solide. Ils peuvent
The document we have established with our municipality is a very robust, solid document. It allows us to contact donors and establish short, middle, and long-term strategies. And it makes us even more credible to be able to benefit from money from donors. We have identified funding opportunities in our municipality. We have applied for grants and projects. Of course, we do not win very often. We sometimes lose a call for tender,
au local. Par exemple, maintenant,
which means that sometimes we have to change things at the local level. For example, right now, at the local level, the municipality manages all basic services: water, electricity,
culturel,
natural and cultural resources. We collect rainwater, we transform waste.
remplacer l'État au local.
So we have kind of replaced the state at the local level because we manage everything ourselves.
Très important car
And during this crisis, some projects are very important because they generate income for the municipality.
pour terminer, est-ce qu'on peut
And to conclude, can we be a source of inspiration for other mayors? Well, of course. My municipality's example can be a source of inspiration.
beaucoup de projets
We have taken part in many projects for capacity building, best practices exchange, through the Covenant of Mayors or through different European projects that we have taken part into.
au Liban comme partout.
Municipalities in Lebanon and elsewhere always have to keep in mind innovation, which is important,
Possibilité de financement. Des
especially to benefit from funding opportunities. When we have funding opportunities, the municipalities have to seize them and benefit from them. Thank you.
Very inspiring for us and hopefully for many others. You and others have spoken about the topic of climate financing. It's of course a burning issue at the level of world politics and again at the local level. You've probably heard Commission President von der Leyen speak about the need for solidarity among the countries of the world, among the regions, and especially solidarity of the European Union with its partners in this context of climate financing. This session is organized, by the way, by the European Commission's DG NEAR. On the issue of financing, and before we open the floor for a discussion with you here and online, I would like to give the floor to an expert on the issue of financing, representing the European Investment Bank, or EIB, which is the EU's climate bank. Also attending the COP at a very high level with your president here in attendance and beyond that. So I would like to introduce to you Mr. Lionel Rapay, who has been with the EIB since 2008, focusing on operations in the Middle East and also Eastern European countries. He became head of the division covering public sector lending operations in the EU Eastern Neighborhood and Central Asia in 2016. Later, he was responsible for the division covering financial instruments, infrastructure, and public sector operations in the Baltic states and Poland. He was appointed director for lending operations in EU neighboring countries in April 2022. And before joining the EIB, Mr. Rapay held various positions dealing with project and leveraged finance operations in the finance departments of Veolia Water Group and the Telecom, among other capacities. Lionel, I'd like to ask you, we know, and we've heard it also from our panelists, that mobilizing public and private funding for climate action can be complex, but is also needed very much. So what, in your experience, are the greatest challenges in mobilizing such funding, and what are the most promising solutions? Would you have some concrete examples to share?
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I'm very pleased to be here and to participate to this panel. And thank you to the colleagues from the Commission to organize this panel. I think it's very good with the COP in Sharm-el-Sheikh to have one panel focusing on climate issues in the Mediterranean region. And we know that the region faces, well, clear challenges. I could read that temperature warming is 20% faster in the region than globally. But it's also a region with lots of solutions and opportunities, notably on renewable energy. So thank you for this. Indeed, the European Investment Bank, as the bank of the EU, is first of all fully committed to the new agenda for the Mediterranean, and as part of it, to support the green transition in the region. And as the EU Climate Bank, as you reminded, well, we have this ambition to scale up substantially our financing to climate mitigation and adaptation projects. Now, indeed, mobilizing financing for climate action is a challenge everywhere. And of course, the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, now the Russian war in Ukraine, is even exacerbating this problem. And this is even more challenging and more urgent to mobilize this financing. What do we see? Well, first of all, we see governments which have less fiscal space, less borrowing capacity, because they had to cope with the pandemic and now with, let's say, inflation in many goods. Most countries are actually seeking support from IMF to reach macro-financial stability. So it's a clear sign that, yes, it is challenging for countries to invest in climate, whereas they have many other priorities in the region, in education, in health, and it's difficult to choose between these various investments which are required. Secondly, private sector is not, let's say, investing enough in climate action. So on institutions like the EIB, international financing institutions can be part of the solution for three reasons. First, we bring, let's say, financing which enables to be sustainable to support this type of investment. Second, we can mobilize expertise and technical assistance. And third, we can crowd in the private sector, which is absolutely necessary to go beyond public financing. Now, the first thing we see is that climate adaptation is not necessarily, and it was indicated, is not necessarily on top of the agenda of a number of governments or authorities. So I think the first challenge is already to identify, to prepare projects for climate adaptation. And this is very much needed in the region. Water scarcity is an issue. I mentioned warming. Mediterranean cities are exposed to sea level rise, are exposed to heat islands, which will happen with warming. So it is crucial to do all this investment. Now, once you have the investments, sometimes we don't necessarily see the capacity to develop this project. And this is not special to the region. We see it in many different regions, including in the EU. So here we try to mobilize as much as possible technical assistance. Just to give a couple of examples, we have developed the City Climate Gap Fund, which we are implementing with the World Bank and GIZ. So it enables cities to prioritize, identify climate adaptation and mitigation projects. And it's a very effective tool, and we have a number of cities in the region benefiting from it. On other examples, we are supporting in Jordan the Cities and Development Bank. So here we are providing a loan combined with technical assistance to help Jordanian cities to invest in renewable energy, in energy efficiency in buildings, and to develop smart solutions, so notably e-transport network, electricity transport networks. Now, once you have the expertise, you need the right financing. And here again, financing is sometimes not enough. So from EIB perspective, in Glasgow, COP26, we committed to have, let's say, a bigger impact on adaptation. And we will triple our investment in adaptation finance. So one element which we are doing is to increase the share of financing which we take. Normally, we finance up to 50% of a given project. For adaptation, we can go up to 75% and even 100% for vulnerable areas. A second aspect is that you need, for some projects, concessionality. Adaptation projects are not necessarily revenue-generating investments. So here you need to bring grant elements, and that's where we partner a lot with the European Commission to bring sufficient grants. Last element is private sector. So we are making lots of efforts to encourage private sector to do more investments in green climate. So we have a greening of the financial systems program, which we are rolling out in the region. So we work with central banks, with commercial banks, to have climate risk assessments embedded into their processes and to be better equipped to finance this type of project. Now, we can see that financing this project from policy dialogue up to implementation is quite a complex task. And that's where I think the element of partnership is very important. So the European Commission instigated the Team Europe approach, where several institutions can bring, let's say, the best they have to offer or they can deliver. This is really something we are implementing in real. So just to give an example, this morning, EIB, alongside EBRD, together with Commission and Union for the Mediterranean, launched the Blue Mediterranean Partnership. So it's basically a program with a fund which will enable to support projects in the blue, sustainable blue economy. Sustainable mobility, let's say sustainable aquaculture, to avoid coastal erosion, and to reduce pollution in the Mediterranean Sea. And here, this is jointly with the partner countries. Currently, we have Morocco, Jordan, and Egypt interested, which will enable to deliver. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lionel. We have about 30 minutes left for discussion with you here in the audience and also online. I'm told that you're encouraged to use Slido for this. Slido has a website, slido.com, and you should use hashtag COP27 Sharm to ask your questions. I don't know if we already have some questions on that platform. Maybe we could also bring in questions here from the audience. So if there's anybody who would like to ask a question, please just raise your hand. I see there's a gentleman in the first row. Maybe before giving you the floor, I would just like to recall, and this was also referred to by the speakers, the EU aspires to be a leader when it comes to countering climate change. Reference was made to the European Green Deal. And in this, we want to partner with the countries in our southern neighborhood in the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean region is particularly affected by the risks posed by climate change. 65% of the population already live in urban areas. And you all know the statistics and forecasts what might happen in this part of the world if temperatures continue to rise and sea levels continue to rise. So there's no question that there's an urgent need to act and to act jointly. And so I would be interested to hear, maybe introduce yourself briefly, sir, and then ask your question.
Can you hear this? Yes, you can. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Romain. I work at the European Training Foundation. We're a European executive agency. We're based in Italy. I did ask my question on Slido, so I'm happy to be able to voice it now. This was a really fascinating panel discussion. I was particularly keen to hear how things happen on the ground, and the example of MedClima and the Lebanon examples were very, very inspiring. But we talked about livelihood, financing being, certainly financing being one of the bottlenecks to climate action. From the research that we conduct at ETF, we find that that's certainly one of the bottlenecks, but the issue of skills and employment is often also a bottleneck, or certainly an obstacle for the local population to be able to benefit from the expansion of green technology that is being implemented through international funding. And this is why I wonder, and this is maybe mostly addressed to you, Namib, when you look at these local climate action plans, do you insist on these plans giving full consideration to the employment potential, to the training needs for the local population?
So thank you very much for your comment and your question. I think it was a combination of two, and a direct question to Dr. Amin. Over to you.
Thank you very much for being here, for your questions. As a matter of fact, we do not take training per se in what we do, because simply all what we do is training. In other terms, what we apply is what we call in our internal jargon on-the-job training. We use the technicians of the municipalities and or coordinators from the country of the governorate, and we work closely with them. By working with them, they prepare the plan with us. And that's already opens the way to what comes next in terms of skills development. But in terms of very, very concrete results to this, we actually finished those plans fully 100% 5 days ago. I mean, new calculations. So we have 90 cities plans, and we can share with you some of them. We have made this survey in the last 3 years, during which we have been preparing those plans without finalizing them with municipalities, and discovered, very positively so, that about 2/3 of the actions in the plans that were not published are being implemented. So the fact of working with them on a plan with the concrete results in terms of baseline emission, with concrete financial approximate return on it, is already in itself a training that has led to concrete action. I hope I answered your questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Before giving the floor to another gentleman here in the audience, I see that there are some questions coming in online. So the first one, I mean, we heard about Lebanon as a country, we heard about Jordan, and now there's a question about Morocco. So the question reads, the EU recently signed a green partnership with Morocco. What are the benefits of having such a partnership? Any volunteers to answer that question? Wouter, the floor is yours.
Thank you. That is a good question. I think the green partnership with Morocco is one. It enables us to underline to recognize the importance that Morocco has already put into the mitigation and adaptation efforts. It is basically a recognition of its leadership, not only in the region but also more widely, and for its potential in establishing a green partnership. And with this partnership, we have coupled a program, an invest program of 115 million. That's already an advantage, I would say, to help support Morocco's climate policies even further. Some of you might know Morocco has had the worst drought in, I think, 40 years. So one of the pillars of the support is aimed at agriculture, but also there's a large section devoted to forestry. And of course, Morocco is also, let's say, an example for developing its solar power. So leadership to be recognized in a partnership coupled with a substantial program. And for us, that is an instrument to also, let's say, show by example and show by leadership. The leadership that Morocco is showing in the region has to be recognized, and we do recognize that with a partnership. Thank you.
Many thanks. I'd like to invite two members of the audience, maybe one after the other, with your short comments and or questions. Sir?
I have a question. I'm a part of the Climamet team. My name is Ruslan Zhechkov, and my question is the following. It is obvious that many initiatives are being undertaken, that there are things done in the countries we are talking about, and there is a risk a little bit of efforts going different ways, and there is a need for coordination, for optimization of the effort. I wonder what the thoughts are of the participants in the panel. how best to coordinate efforts between different actors, EU and individual institutions and the UN bodies, etc., so that the effort is maximized and the impact is maximized.
Okay, and maybe we give the floor to the gentleman right next to you before opening the floor.
Thank you very much. My name is Osama Kasamani from Climate Program. My question is for EIB is what is the challenges you are facing with funding the local authorities? If you give me example of CVD Bank in Jordan, what are the difficulties you are facing and how you think it can be improved or solved? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let's start with the first question. Dr. Amin, you've spoken already about ClimaMed, so maybe would you want to come in from, again, sharing your expertise? You've been a part of the ClimaMed program. Do you have any thoughts on the question that you heard from the gentleman here about implementation?
For implementation, pour l'implémentation, excusez-moi, pour implémenter des projets, la majorité des municipalités qui ont suivi avec les premiers projets européens CESMED, ils ont eu des plans d'action et maintenant
they had action plans and they now renewed their commitments and they have new action plans for climate. In particular, municipalities don't ask money for money as materials. They wish to have projects. In action plans, there are some tasks. There are over 20 at the end of actions to reach the commitments for municipalities in favor of renewable energies and climate measures. So these municipalities wish to build partnerships, whether with foundations, donors, to implement one or several actions subscribed in these actions. Thank
The EIB's engagement, and I see from the online chat room on Slido that there's quite some interest in what the EIB as the EU's climate bank is doing. I'm sure that Lionel Rapay is pleased to see that interest. So would you mind taking the first question, and then maybe you see the other questions on the screen in front of you. There are actually 3 directed to EIB, so maybe make reference. I mean, the other questions, just to share it with the audience, there's one on the role of philanthropy and public-private partnerships, and you also spoke about it before. Maybe the EIB has views on bringing in philanthropy. And then the other question is, does the EIB consider to build upon the efforts that the EU already provides as technical assistance in preparing, I can't read that word, and feasibility studies, and how? So 3 questions to the EIB. Over to Lionel.
Okay, first question was on the possibility to support municipalities and what are the challenges we face. Well, I think challenges can be very diverse, let's face it, from one city to another. Sometimes there is an issue simply of, borrowing, being able to be, let's say, credit-worthy for financing institutions. And here we need to figure out to which extent we can either lend or encourage commercial banks to lend to municipalities which are maybe considered more risky. So here that's where we try to put in place de-risking instruments with budgetary grants to incentivize lenders, institutions to lend to municipalities. That's one aspect. The second aspect, and I will then answer the question on technical assistance, is that some, let's say, medium-sized municipalities may not invest or conduct large-scale projects every day, if I may say. Now, if you need to embark in a very large-scale, I don't know, tramway project or wastewater treatment plant system, which we have not done for the last 30 years, you need to have external support. And that's where we try to bring capacity in the municipality and or technical assistance. So these are, I would say, the 2 main challenges: credit access to finance and technical expertise. The question on technical assistance, well, by all means, we are keen to work on the basis of technical assistance provided by the EU. And actually, most of the technical assistance program which we roll out are funded by the EU, the European Commission. So clearly, we are partnering all the time between EU institutions. We also partner with philanthropic institutions. So I think indeed we see a growing interest in climate and sometimes on specific elements. For instance, on climate innovation, we see some philanthropics who want to develop breakthrough technologies, and that's where, in a way, we can team up with these philanthropic, let's say, foundations, institutions to work with.
Thank you very much. We have 10 minutes left before we have to wrap up the session. I would like to take a moment to thank the panelists and especially the audience for choosing this EU side event. We are competing with hundreds of events happening at the same place, so it's great to see you here and the many participants online. Speaking of those participants, I see that Emma Greer is joining us from Milan in Italy, and she's asking, are there any city-led initiatives that deal with upgrading the energy performance of citizens' homes that you could share with us? And you are our panelists, so who would like to take this question? Yes, sir.
Nous, dans notre plan d'action, on a mis
In our action plan, we have included an action which is called Home Doctor.
on a implémenté cette action avec
And we have implemented this action with great success, thanks to the help of an expert, an energy expert, who visited all homes to check house insulation, to improve
électroménager
heat performances, and he also checked all electric devices to determine whether all devices used were consuming a lot of energy and electricity. And this expert has issued recommendations to each house so as to improve the energy performance of each house.
A few. So there is one popping up from Anonymous, and it reads, is there interest in the Mediterranean to join the Global Covenant of Mayors Initiative? What's in it for the city? So this is something that Wouter talked about. This is something that also our mayor from Lebanon is joining, or is a part of with his municipality. Who would like to answer this question? Dr. Amin.
If you allow me first, just to come back to the earlier question, just to remind me. In fact, the question was about is the energy dimension included in homes in cities? Yes, they are. In each and every SECAPs that we have prepared, in those 69 SECAPs or 92 cities, one of the actions is actually applying solutions to reduce or to make sustainable energy in houses, in the residential sector. Obviously, this is more of a political start-up technical decision and would take too long to do, but what Dr. George Youssef here is saying is actually an implementation of a political things. When it comes to the Conference of Mayors, in our project as well, ClimaMed, we actually created Conference of Mayors and we are managing it. The importance of Conference of Mayors is to link the cities into such a regional and global action that would facilitate its integration and being taken seriously in a sense with this SECAPS that is in itself recognized globally, and it takes the whole city from such local level to a global climate action general ones.
Thank you very much. Any further brief comments from the panelists? Otherwise, I would open the floor maybe for a final question. Anyone? I see one which reads, what is the level of implementation of SECAPs in the region? Anyone with a brief comment on that one? Okay, not really. So let me maybe start to wrap up. In order not to forget about this, it's important and hopefully relevant to many of you. There will be a second session, also hosted by the engineer, in 30 minutes from now, and that is 1900 Egypt time, 1800 Brussels time, and then please do the math for your respective regions if you are following us online, but it's 30 minutes from now, and that will be on adaptation in the southern Mediterranean, especially on water and food security, pressing issues. So if you're interested in that, there's another 1-hour session coming your way. Is there anyone with a final comment or question before we wrap up? Okay, doesn't seem to be the case. Thank you very much again for joining us. We're closing 5 minutes ahead of the scheduled time. Maybe you will appreciate this. Maybe have a strong coffee to stay awake for the next session. Thank you very much. And thanks again to our panelists for taking the time and for everyone's interest in the EU's policies and the partnership with the Southern Mediterranean. Thank you very much. All right.
At the crossroads of civilizations, Mediterranean cities are diverse with creativity, unique in their personalities, rich with cultures, gentle in their lifestyles, and warm to people. But global warming is happening at rates exceeding overall averages. And the Mediterranean is already facing environmental threats and suffering from the effects of climate change. Climate change is real and is affecting the Mediterranean region to varying degrees. Lack of rain is contributing to droughts, leading to desertification and exposing cities to water stress. Farmers whose crops are suffering and whose productivity is dropping have begun to leave their land. Excessive reliance on fossil fuels and fuel oil generators is causing air pollution, water pollution, and waste. And greenhouse gas emissions are rising. To top it all, cities struggle with resource management, facing difficulties accessing climate finance and often lacking the adaptive capacity to bear major disasters. All those threats and practices increase the environmental footprint, put significant pressure on cities, adversely affect their resilience, and threatens their citizens' health. But in the urgency and complexity of the climate crisis and the challenges facing the cities, there are reasons for hope, and good things are happening. As a response to runaway climate change, many cities and their mayors have seized the opportunity to adapt to climate impacts. They have demonstrated their willingness and capacity to change the course of things with ambitious climate actions, advancing solutions to sustainable development projects for cleaner, greener, and safer cities. Support for climate action is at the heart of the EU Green Deal and one of its core objectives. As part of the EU adaptation strategy and its work in the southern neighborhood, it provides an opportunity to promote the green transition and help cities adapt to climate impacts through projects such as Climamed. Climamed focuses on bottom-up measures to address climate change impact, but also people's equality and social cohesion. Through trusted relationships, Climamed is working at both national and local levels, building the city's capacities and ability to address climate challenges, harnessing opportunities for more stable, efficient, competitive, and climate-resilient socio-economic contexts. One by one, cities have decisively developed their energy and climate action plans, putting forward a new vision for their future. And global awareness of climate change is growing. Men and women who want to make a difference are speaking of simple solutions to bring CO2 emissions down, proposing alternatives to the climate crisis to heal the land with healthy climate and bring positive effects on the community's well-being. Because we're all in this together.